And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host, Demo, and this is 10 cards from Commander 2021 that I think people should avoid. These are basically trap cards. They're cards that on the surface might seem like a really good idea to put in your deck, and it's likely you're going to take something out that's better to put one of these in. You know, this happens every set, I'm sure. There's always those cards that people see, and they're like, man, that's going to be great in my deck, and you put it in there, and it sticks around for a few weeks, and you realize it's not very good, so you take it out. Usually it lasts until the next set, and then you're like, oh yeah, I put that in the last set, and I never use it, or it sucks, so you just end up replacing it with whatever the new it card from the new set is, right? I decided to do this list before I did my top 20 cards you should be playing, right? The top 20 cards from the set, because I really wasn't super impressed. You know, Strixhaven, I think, was way better for Commander than Commander 2021 was. I really wasn't super impressed with some of these cards. So starting out with a couple of honorable mentions, Cunning Rhetoric. 3 mana enchantment, 2 and a black. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or one or more planeswalkers you control, exile a top card of that player's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. This card in general, I think, is just, I mean, you're encouraging your opponents to attack you. Don't think that's great. I mean, it's essentially the opposite of a ghostly prison. I mean, if you think that your opponents are not going to attack you because you have this, think again. I mean, you're just getting random stuff off the top of their library, which might be good, might be bad, might be completely useless to you, right? So I just don't think it's great at all. If you're trying to find room for this in your deck, I would stop now. Monologue Tax, 2 and a white enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. So this is obviously their attempt at making a new Smothering Tithe or a different version of Smothering Tithe. It's not nearly as good, right? Your opponents are always going to be drawing cards. And sometimes they're going to be drawing a lot of cards. That's why Smothering Tithe is so good. And this, the best case scenario here is you get 3 treasure tokens on a turn cycle. It's okay. For me, I have a few mono white decks, and I think I'll not put this in any of them. So starting out at the number 10 spot, Rousing Refrain. 3 red. Add 1 red for each card in target opponent's hand. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Exile Rousing Refrain with 3 time counters on it. And it has Suspend 3, 1 and a red. So again, this seems like a trap card to me. This seems like a card that people will look at and go, wow, I get to add all this mana. I mean, first of all, if you cast it for its actual cost, it's a really bad mana geyser. Really bad mana. I mean, how much are you going to get for this? 7? Maybe? I know people will say, oh, what if my opponent's got 20 cards in his hand? Or, okay, what if? Like, I don't like playing the if game when it comes to cards. I like playing the what's usually going to happen, right? And what's usually going to happen is you might have one opponent with 7 cards in hand, might not even have that. So you're paying 5 mana to get 7 mana. That's really not great. I mean, the fact that you don't lose it as steps and phases end, they only put that in there because obviously it's going to get cast on your upkeep. So now you can, you know, move to your main phase before you use that mana. That's the only reason why they put that part in there. So that's not great. And then you're going to exile it, and in 3 turns you get to do it again. Okay. I mean, man, if you're planning on playing a really long game, this might be good. And I know people might think, hey, if I do that, you know, if I suspend this on turn 1, maybe it can be good. Sure. But what if you draw it on turn 6 or something? Like, is it good then? You're not going to suspend it because the game might be over before you get it. And so you're just going to cast it for 5 and get, what, 6 mana maybe or 7? I don't think it's great. However, it is the only red card on this list. I actually think red probably made out the best in Commander 2021. So there's something to be said for that. Coming in at number 9, Commander's Insight X, blue. Instant, target player draws X cards, plus an additional card for each time they've cast a commander from the command zone this game. So Command Zone did a little thing a while ago about how many times you cast your commander from the command zone, I think. Typically it's 1. Most games, people cast their commander only once. Not often do they cast it twice, and above that is almost never. So you're probably going to get an extra 1 off of this. This is probably going to be, I pay 6 mana, draw 4 cards at instant speed, which is Opportunity, right? Opportunity does that, 6 mana, draw 4 cards at instant speed, which is okay. It's just not great. This is not really great at all. I guess you could play this over Stroke of Genius. Maybe you play it over Blue Sun Zenith. Although, typically people play Blue Sun Zenith because it shuffles into your library. And usually you're doing some shenanigans there. I don't know. I don't suspect it's going to see much play. Coming in at number 8, Sequence Engine. 2 and a green. Artifact. Pay X, exile target creature card with mana value X from a graveyard. Create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put X+1/+1 counters on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So I'm looking at this and I'm just thinking, what's the scenario where I want to put this in my deck? Basically, you're paying X for an XX creature, which is not very good. The fact that you only can activate it as a sorcery, to me, makes this unplayable. Like, there's just better cards that do this similar effect. You have to tap it, so you can only use it once each turn. You have to pay X. So what if there's only big cards in graveyards, right? I like graveyard hate, but this is terrible for graveyard hate. Your opponent's got a Shieldred in their graveyard. You can't exile it at instant speed, so that's out. If they're going to reanimate it, you can't respond with this. So that does nothing. But even if you know they're going to get it out of your graveyard, you have to pay 7 mana to exile it out of their graveyard. If we're just talking about this is good for creating creature tokens, it's just not. I think there's way better options. If you just want to create some creature tokens, this just seems unplayable. And I know people will say, well, why am I picking out these cards that are unplayable? Remember, this is a commander set. And that's why, I'm kind of going to be brutal with some of these cards, because these are cards that they're specifically printing for us to play in Commander. And some of them I'm just baffled at why. I'm like, why? Why would anybody play that? Why did they even print it? Next up, Keen Duelist. 1 and a black. 2/2 human wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put that card you revealed into your hand. I know there's people that'll probably think this is a bad Dark Confidant. It's not. It's not even a bad Dark Confidant. It's a horrible Dark Confidant. Just to clarify so people are aware, I'm going to pick an opponent. They get to do it too. And I lose life equal to their mana value of their card. So I have 0 control over that. I suppose there's a way where I can manipulate it. If you want to build your whole deck around this card, I can put stuff on my library, I guess, if I want to shoot my opponent for a lot of damage. I think this might be a good fit in a Eureka deck where you're already doing that, right? You're already putting that Temporal Trespass on top of your library. So maybe this would work in that deck. Then again, you're also letting your opponent draw. You're also taking damage. Like, what if your opponent flips an Ulamog off the top of their library? You're taking 10 damage too. So, especially considering a lot of people put big, expensive spells in their deck. It's not unlikely that someone's going to flip a 7 or an 8 CMC card off the top and smash you with it, right? And I know people say, hey, well, this is good in a political deck. What political deck, though? What's the scenario here? I want my opponent to draw, but I'm also hitting them for damage? You're not making a friend, are you? You're making a frenemy? What do you, I don't understand. Why would you ever want to do any of this? I don't get it. Like I said, the only thing I can think of is I put this in my Eureka deck because I'm going to Mystical Tutor a Temporal Trespass to the top, and I can hit that guy for 11 damage. That's about it. Coming in at number 6, Muse Vortex. X blue. Sorcery. Exile the top X cards of your library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value X or less from among them without paying its mana cost. Then put the exiled instant and sorcery cards that weren't cast this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So this is just a great trap card, right? This is the kind of card that people see cast it for free and they get all excited about it, right? Yes, and I know people will say, oh, well, I can just stack the top of my library, right? And get something I want. Okay, you still have to pay X, though. You can't just get an expropriate off the top with this, right? You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value X or less from among them. So that means you would have to pay X is 9 blue, so 11 mana? That's terrible, right? Let's just play this through. Let's say X is 4. So that would mean you're paying 6. 6 is a pretty good number. It's not a lot. It's not a little. It's about in the middle. So I'm paying 6 mana for my Muse Vortex. There's a lot of great things you can do in Commander with 6 mana. Exile the top 4 cards of your library. right? So out of those 4 cards, how many are going to even be an instant or sorcery spell? Maybe none. First of all, you're only going to be playing a spell slinger deck with this card, I assume. Even then, there's a chance you whiff. Maybe you get a land, a creature, and a mana rock, and another creature or something, right? Maybe you only get 1. For me, I can't stand cards like this where there's a chance you'll whiff and get nothing. Pay 6 mana, you exile 4 cards, and there's 0 instants and sorceries, so you cast nothing and you put nothing in your hand. I would be so embarrassed by that play that I would probably scoop and walk away. That's so bad. I think they try to draw people in with these X spells because, oh, what if you cast it for 20? Oh, I mean, okay. I guess there's that scenario, but how often is that going to happen, right? I think if you put this card in your deck, a lot of the times you're going to be casting it for 3 or 4, and it's just not going to be very good. Coming in at number 5, Bold Plagiarist. 3 and a black, Vampire Rogue, 2/2. It's got Flash. Whenever an opponent puts 1 or more counters on a creature they control, they put the same number and kind of counters on Bold Plagiarist. This is, again, I think it's a perfect trap card where you look at it, and I did the same thing. I looked at this and I was like, oh, wow, that's such a unique, interesting ability, and it is, but you're not stealing the counters, right? This is not like Crafty Cut Purse where it comes into play and instead of your opponents getting the tokens, you're getting them. They're still putting all the counters on their creatures. Again, what's the best case scenario here, right? Let's pretend our opponent has an Avenger of Zendikar. They get 10 plant tokens with their Avenger of Zendikar, and then they play 2 lands, right? They make 2 land drops, put 2 +1/+1 counters on their plant tokens, right? That's sort of the dream scenario here, I think, right? The counters still go on their plant token. You're not stealing them. You're going to get all those, though. Again, this is the dream scenario. They put the same number and kind of counters on your Bold Plagiarist. They can just chump with a plant token, though. Like a vanilla creature in Commander is really kind of useless, I think. It's just like Body of Research from Strixhaven. That's like another card that people went, wow, oh, you get this huge giant creature. Yeah, but it's just a vanilla creature. Like, what good is that? If that card had been white and blue, it would have been fantastic in a Temet deck because you could make it unblockable. But just a big, giant vanilla creature in Commander, I don't think is good at all. And Bold Plagiarist, most of the time, I think is just going to be doing that. The fact that it has Flash even is just like, who cares? Ooh, ha, flashed it in, gotcha. Now you have to not put, oh, you're putting counters on your creatures anyway? And then I just get them too, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know, just not very good. Coming in at number 4, and now we're getting into the really awful cards. Again, cards that I think people will look at and think they might be good. Pest Infestation, X, X, and a green. Destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. Create twice X 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. If this was an instant, it would probably be number 9 or 10 on this list. The fact that it's a sorcery makes it completely unplayable, I think, especially since green has so much great artifact and enchantment removal already. So to kill 1 artifact or enchantment, 3 mana, right? So 3 mana is a Krosan Grip or a Beast Within or something, right? For 3 mana at sorcery speed, you destroy 1 artifact or enchantment and you get 2 1/1 pest tokens. Brutal. That's terrible. That's really, in Commander, that's really bad. Let's do 2. Now we're paying 5 mana. We're paying 5 mana to destroy 2 artifacts and enchantments, and we get pest tokens. Like that's bad. If you really, really want the tokens in your deck, okay, maybe that's good. Maybe if you need the tokens for sacking or something. But to me, this is, I'm destroying artifacts and enchantments. That's why I'm putting it in the deck. And I can pay 4 mana or possibly even free and use Force of Vigor to destroy 2 artifacts and enchantments. This card is completely unplayable. With all of the stuff that green has for destroying artifacts and enchantments, there has to be a very specific reason why you put this in your deck. Coming in at number 3, and these cards just keep getting worse and worse. Again, these are Commander cards. These are cards that they specifically printed for us to be playing in Commander, right? Inspiring Refrain, 4 blue, 6 mana sorcery. Again, sorceries are just, ooh. Draw 2 cards. Exile Inspiring Refrain with 3 time counters on it. And it has Suspend 3, 2, and a blue. Like, why would you ever play this? I just want, I'm the guy who says, hey, put Time and Tide in your deck, right? That card's bad. Let's be honest, that card's bad. However, I'm the guy who says, hey, maybe there's a scenario where it might be good. If your opponent plays Teferi's Protection, you can go, aha, Time and Tide, and your creatures actually do phase back in, and then they get killed by that board wipe. I'm that guy. But I mean, come on. What's the situation where you're playing this? Best case scenario. What's the best case scenario? First turn, I play an island and a mana crypt, and I suspend 3 this. And then 3 turns later, I get to draw 2 cards and then exile it. And then 3 turns after that. Like, if this was in white, I mean, honestly, if this was a mono white card, I still might not play it. Okay, I might be like, it's okay, I guess. In a blue deck, not a chance. I mean, as far as card draw goes, this is so far down the list that if every card in your deck was a card draw spell, this still wouldn't be on there. I don't know. I mean, what's the scenario here? Even if I'm playing a Vega or Raynar deck, which this is made for, I still don't put it in there. I definitely wouldn't put this in my Raynar deck. In my Vega deck that I made, you know, that deck is really slow and it sort of drags the game out. So there is a chance you can get this a couple of times. And I do have a couple cards in there that do exile and put counters on themselves again and then come back. That does work good in the deck, but even then I still probably wouldn't play this in there. Like, what were they thinking? This is a commander card, you guys. It's a rare. Coming in at number 2, Promise of Loyalty. 4 and a white. Sorcery. Each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Each of those creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control for as long as it has a vow counter on it. So the top 2 cards on this list are really trap cards. They're not necessarily terrible. They're just cards that I think people will see and go, wow, that's so good. And it's actually not. I think you really need to play through the scenario to understand why. So first of all, we're in white. This is a board wipe in white. So, I mean, your options are almost endless. There's just so many great options that just that alone, I don't know why you would play this, but the person that is playing this, here's what they're thinking. They're thinking, and I sort of thought this too. When I first read this, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then I was like, oh, no, it's not. You're going to cast this. And each of your opponents, right, and you too, right, so you get to pick a creature that doesn't die. Your opponents each get to pick their best creature. Oh, but that creature doesn't get to attack you? So what? What if it's not, what if it's Obeka, right? What if it's Tatyova? What if it's a million commanders in the format that you never want to be attacking with anyway? Most commanders, right? Who cares about that it can't attack you? So what? Chances are the creature that they keep is their commander that they've built their entire deck around, and they're never going to plan on attacking with it anyway. So all this is just a really, really bad board wipe where you let your opponents keep their best creature. Terrible. Don't ever play this. I don't know what they were. I mean, I get it. It can be a little political. It's a hug card. That's it. That's the only time I would play this is in a hug deck. That's it. Coming in at number 1, Reinterpret. 2, blue, red, instant. Counter target spell. You may cast a spell with an equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. And I'm sure a lot of people are shocked to see this. I'm sure there's some people out there that have to recheck the name of the video because they think this is the best cards from Commander 2021. This is not the worst card in the set. Okay, this is not. I'm not putting this at number 1 because it's the worst card in the set. It's the worst trap card in the set. Okay, what I mean is this is the card that everyone looks at and goes, oh, wow, and goes and shoves it in all their decks. I just did my Deck Doctor video, last week, I think, and I talked about the counterspell trap, right? And what the counterspell trap is people shove lots of counterspells in their deck because counterspells are so great, right? They solve all your problems. And then what ends up happening is because you have counterspells in your hand all the time, you just leave your mana untapped in case you have to counter something. And then your opponents don't cast anything really that good. So you end up countering an Arcane Signet or something, because if you don't counter something, then you just wasted your whole turn. In certain decks, that strategy works fine, right? If you're playing a Talron deck or that new Commander Dika, right? That is specifically the strategy you want to be doing in a deck like that, right? You want to be casting stuff on your opponent's turns. You're getting value from it, so that works. But unless you're doing that, that strategy is terrible, okay? And you're just sitting there doing nothing. You're annoying your opponents by countering all their stuff. This card is the epitome of that, okay? Because you're waiting for that big splashy thing to happen. I think this card is going to sit in your hand and you're going to just wait, right? Because you're casting a spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. So what you're doing is you're sitting there and you're going, okay, I have a Reinterpret in my hand and I have another big, splashy spell that I want to cast for free in my hand as well. And now I have to wait until my opponents cast something with equal or lesser mana value so that I can cast that thing for free. And I think you're just going to be sitting there wasting a whole lot of turns. Or there's going to be the scenario where your opponent does cast a Expropriate and you go, aha, Reinterpret. And you counter that spell and then you cast that, 2-drop from your hand for free or something. Like that scenario isn't good either. I think the scenario where my opponent casts an Expropriate and then I get to cast the Expropriate from my hand for free. How often is that going to happen? Like that is such a fringe scenario. You would have to set it up. It's just so much work and so many hoops to jump through that this is not worth making room in your deck for it. There's so many great counter spells out there already, right? If you just think about Counterflux, right? I'm playing an Izzet deck. Counterflux is, it just counters everything. It can't be countered. It's a fantastic counter spell. It only costs 3 mana. It can cost 4 if you want to overload it. So you have that option if you want. Am I going to take Counterflux out of my deck for this? No chance. I just think that, again, you get drawn in by the, I get to cast something from my hand for free. Even Spelljack, another card that I talked about, one of my 10 cards videos, I would put in my deck over this because now I can sit there and my opponent casts an Expropriate and I just get to use it now, right? I counter it and I get to cast it, right? Or my opponent casts that, Rise of the Dark Realms or whatever. And now I get it, right? And I'm guaranteed I'm getting something really, really good with Spelljack. With this, I'm not. With this, I'm countering my opponent's spell, and if I have something really good in my hand, I get it. And if I don't, then I just paid 4 mana to counter a spell. That just doesn't seem good to me at all. This is quintessential trap card. This is the card that, Wizards of the Coast puts in a commander set and everyone goes, oh my God, it's amazing. I got to go run out and get that card. And I've already seen people talking about it. I just think there is such a specific set of circumstances that has to happen in order for this card to be really good. So I don't recommend playing it. I don't recommend playing any. There's a couple cards on this list that I think might be good in specific scenarios. There's always those fringe cases. Like I said, I mention cards all the time that might be good in very specific decks or very specific scenarios. But for me, mostly the cards on this list, I think, are sort of those big splashy spells that, cast stuff for free. And those sort of buzzwords that attract people's attention. Or, hey, Monologue Tax sort of reminds me of Smothering Tithe. So that must be good, just like Smothering Tithe, right? No, it's not. I think a lot of the cards in this set, to me, feel like Wizards of the Coast is taking some idea that people really like about the format or certain cards that people really like in the format. And they're sort of doing a take on it that is a little different, but not nearly as good. So yeah, that is it. That's 10 cards that I think you should probably not put in your Commander decks, essentially is what this video is from Commander 2021. That is it for today. And thanks for tuning in.